Welcome back to Sands of Salzaar. This is more of an announcement video than anything else. I have updated the guide to 1.0.30 and I've included the tournament champions in it. There's several reasons why the guide has taken so long, and I really only feel right about talking about a couple of them. One of which is the skills tips are totally broken, and I've had to dig through files and try to machine translate Chinese characters in order to figure out what I'm supposed to be reading. This video is going to cover a lot of topics, but really it's mostly to announce I've updated the guide and all links will direct to the newest version. So what you're seeing here is something that's been bugged since January, according to the notes I've found online. People cannot progress past certain quests, such as the Spirit Wedge. Here's how you do it. You switch to Chinese mode, because only the English version is bugged. You'll have to get used to toggling this if you ever run into a situation where you cannot progress because the game is completely locked you out. I'm going to leave every message window up long enough for you to pause, but during this quest line, you track down a wizard and pick whatever options you want. There may be a point where you get soft locked, you can't even escape. Go back to the main menu, switch to Chinese. Resume your game if you can navigate to your save. Don't delete it. Watch out, pick the button on the right, and then run in and pick whatever choices you feel like. Best thing I can suggest for situations like this is to hold up your phone and submit the characters to a translation site, and then pick your options that you desire from there. But I will say that if you play your cards correctly, you can hire Malik as part of your entourage. Each of the different characters and their quests often include characters that can be difficult to recruit and are exclusive to that story. So it's a shame that Sands of Salzaar has done very little to allow you to see this content. If you've made it this far in the video and you have no clue what Sands of Salzaar is, first off, thank you for staying. I truly appreciate your interest in this game. The most common way I've heard Sands of Salzaar described is a Chinese version of Mount & Blade. It doesn't really appear to be receiving regular updates, and I feel like the original game treated the player better. You could hover your mouse over attributes and it would tell you what they did. The user interface wasn't as cluttered and you could interact with more of them. You could even zoom your camera further out. I don't know why they're stripping down the game, but it could have something to do with porting this to other systems. At this point, I'm going to switch to Chinese mode, so please watch carefully so that you can revert your settings if you also wish to follow these steps. Go ahead and save your game here. Then go back to the main menu. Click on the gear in the bottom right. Click on the language menu in the top left. Exit out of the update. Second button in the menu. Select your save and then pick the button on the right. That's very important. The button on the left will delete. Now, I'm not going to win this fight in the slightest because I didn't really prepare for it, and I did toggle the difficulty mode to the highest possible setting that I've already unlocked. Hopefully you will fare better in your fight. Continue to go through whatever dialogue you have, and then once you've saved, I won't be doing so here, but once you've saved, click on the bottom button in the brown box to go back to the main menu. Go back to the gear, drop down menu in the top left, English. And there you are. Now you're back. Alright, we've reached Frost Valley. Hopefully there is a tournament champion here we can just look at and see what they're like. Cranison is one. Yeah, he's the only new character in this roster here. So we can see that he doesn't speak English. However, if you wanted to recruit him, you would basically... he suddenly speaks English. The reason is this is a generic dialogue line. If I were to say try recruit Agonazar, this might be one of the lines she uses. but the Cranison specific dialogue lines are not translated. You'll have to, since you cannot give them gifts, you will need to run errands for them, or even befriend them. And how do you befriend them? Well, other than errands, if you befriend their friends, that will work for you. My spreadsheet that you can download will show you who their friends are. And of course, the reason why they're all here is because there's a tournament dude, not to be confused with the tournament host. Tournament recruiter is for the DLC. Tournament host is for the standard base game update, which has brawling in it, which has been in there for a long time. Basically, you really just have to wait for this to start. But the wait for start, at least the last time I did it, didn't do anything. So we are going to click participate, and we will die, of course. It's the same dialogue he has all the time. We'll click wait for start and see if anything happens. No, nothing happens. So we just have to sit here. And that's not exciting. But the reason why you'll lose is you'll fight the head honcho of the faction that is hosting the tournament, which I think is not cool. There's generally the people hosting the tournament don't participate, but I guess you probably do in Mountain Blade, so there you go. We can see that there's different teams, and then we got the Ruha team. What really happens is it's just 3 versus 3. There's no soldiers, there's nothing. They just plop 3 people down, and you guys fight, and the winner gets Glacius Flower Whisper. In this case, it's a random tournament item. If you want to see what kind of tournament items you can get, also in the spreadsheet. So, yeah, when you fight these guys, you will probably lose because the Overlord is going to be high level. He'll be the same level as everyone else in his army, but those who are in factions start out higher level than the player do. Not only that, he's going to have good gear, and we don't have that. Skills are probably not going to be that big a deal, except for the other category. So they may have something special, like Disable Resistance, that the Lord has access to, that you will not. The other skills are fine. That covers the tournament DLC. The spreadsheet should look familiar if you've seen the previous video at all. Some of the categories are hidden. You're welcome to show them, but it's information that I don't think you really have any real use for, such as knowing what their equipped HP is, or any of that stuff. But if you really want to see it, you're welcome to reveal those columns. I wanted to try to minimize how much you had to sift through to get usable information. Comments is probably what you're looking for if you want my opinion on anything. And if you're looking for the new tournament people, let's type in tournament into the find bar. So with the tournament DLC, there's going to be a lot of text here, starting with Agura. First off, his equipable weapon type is shield. There is a shield in the game files, and maybe you could randomly draw it as loot, but realistically you should never expect to find it, so I would not even unequip him. Leave him with his two-handed sword. Once you equip him, the game will say like, oh, you want to equip him with a broadsword? You can't, it has to be a shield. So just leave it alone. It does make sense though, because his skills do talk about having a shield. It's just the game has not implemented that. His line of favorite gifts is Chinese, so I've machine translated it here for you. All of the characters will have their various dialogues translated if you just kind of want to get a feel for their personality, but ultimately it doesn't really matter. Even talking about their gifts doesn't matter because, again, they don't accept gifts. When I say skill values are highly inflated, I mean that if you were to recruit Cranison, it might say he'll do 4,000 damage, and then when you bring him to battle, it'll say something like 200 damage. I've managed to figure out, 1, how the game figures out the exact formula for their listed value, and 2, what I believe to be a more accurate value. You're welcome to disagree with that, and since you are free to download the spreadsheet, make the changes if you'd prefer believing in the game's descriptions. However, I've taken a few more liberties with how I type some of this stuff out because of my experience trying to translate Sands of Salzaar, the game, for myself. For example, I assume that when Sands of Salzaar updates their translation for these guys, if they ever do, they're going to machine translate it, and they're going to say that, darn it, where did my croissant go? Oh, it's in my hand. Like, that was what I first had but I ran it through a different machine and saw drinking horn. It's like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. The croissant was kind of funny. Other things like pole blade. That is what our assassin tournament girl uses, a pole blade. I've never heard that term. Maybe it is a term, but I think a hidden blade might be a better translation. So it's all sorts of things here. If you don't like my liberties, I can understand that. Some people are purists, and I respect that. But for me to try to give out guides, I need to be able to communicate effectively, and that means using concepts and terms people can understand. Or even if you disagree with me, I hope that you can understand why I chose to do so. So if we take a look at Jaina, she has a lot of kung fu abilities. However, she is a little bit bugged in that, well, not bugged. She's inferior to Batu because she doesn't get as strong as Batu. I'm not talking even about the strength value, but her physical attack value. Even if you were to get them in the same party and send them at the enemy, Batu does more damage. There's always a little leaderboard at the end of each battle, and I can clearly see Batu is the victor here. Even if I give them all their skill points and stuff. Now maybe Jaina might be stronger if you were to load her up on strength pills, but I think that as a player, if you're looking to min-max your game, you probably want to give the strength pills to your character, even if he's a wizard. It's just my assumption here. Maybe not. But there probably are better characters to spend them on anyways. Zan, look, this stuff right here is me giving up on translation because I know that people have been waiting for this guide to be updated for some time, and I keep running into issues. First was me trying to figure out how the game figures out its values because they are not reflected in the actual performance. And then I just kind of gave up on believing what the game had to say. Sometimes it's just translation things, like them talking about power of the soul, spirit power, and spiritual energy. It's like, what are all these terms? And then I started thinking like, oh, you know what? They're probably translating it, but not really understanding the word they're picking. They're basically throwing darts at a dictionary here and just picking whatever pops out of the machine translation. So I named all of those things here into spiritual power. Again, that's just so that I can convey my concepts. But yes, this is what I'm looking at when I'm trying to figure out what the game is telling me. Def Val is your character's skill level. Stat B Spirit, that's the first time I've ever seen it. It's the first time I've been able to find it in the files. It's probably Spirit. That's not hard to find. Well, I'm used to translating it from this, and not when I say translate, Spirit is probably Spirit as in your character stat, which isn't used often, by the way, in your skills. But every other time I've had to deal with it, it has been these two characters. So that wasn't really hard. S magic, awkward. All right, I'm going to assume magic attack based because Zan is a wizard type character. So I'm assuming that's really just magic attack. Not a big deal. However, the biggest issue for her skill that I just gave up on is S Gong. I don't know what that is. Normally, I can tinker with the character's stats. I'll give them a pill or change their equipment, and I'll fluctuate the numbers so I can figure out what these characters represent or what the random abbreviated alias or ID is or variable is. I no such luck in this one because it just has a very low number that I don't think is being influenced by anything in the actual game. I just kind of gave up on that. Still, I know that this spreadsheet is good work, but I always feel a little self-conscious about it because it is not 100% perfect. I remember a lesson once. I was talking about what things are time killers. Things like procrastination, like what things cost you productivity. And a surprising thing I learned from that was perfection is a time killer. I know it doesn't have to do with Sands of Salzaar, but it's kind of an important lesson, and I'll share it with you. I think it was one of those heartfelt fireside moments. Everybody clicks ahead. But the reason why perfection is a time killer is because you spend, we'll say, so many extra hours squeezing out just a drop more productivity. And it's better to go on to something else, whether you are a movie producer or a writer or even if you are, say, a carpenter, right? You could be spending 7 hours making more details on the back of the chair leg. Or you can make 3 more chairs in that time. I've never done anything with carpentry, so that's probably a bad analogy, but I tried to pick something that wasn't like video related. I apologize for the delay in this guide being sent out, but when you take a look at the extreme number of skills, there's almost 350 skills, and I had to make them conform so that there's a consistent pattern for the viewer to understand what is being conveyed here. Because these skills, let's take a look at some of these right here. Team gear durability loss, 5 plus skill x10. I have no idea what that means, and so I left it as the tooltip for the game. Does it mean that there's like a 15% less durability loss at level 1? I'm not really sure the game works that way, because I think every battle is like 1 durability loss, if I remember correctly, but it's been a very long time since I played Sands of Salzaar, so. There's a new thing that had been incorporated with the tournament DLC where they are linking other skills and they highlighted the text. So, for example, this one used to say the ally supported by N or A flying shield. I think it said an flying shield, though that wouldn't be grammatically correct. I think that's what it said. An flying shield gets an additional whatever. Well, since they've already incorporated that pattern of highlighting text to describe another skill, I went ahead and transcribed some of the text to represent that. So any ally supported by the flying shield skill gets this. I think the original text for this kind of implied to me that the Agura, the person who uses the skill, the Agura was going to get this bonus. So I think I rewrote this to say the ally. There are going to be some changes. If you're like a super diehard Sands of Salzaar purist, this was actually something I really struggled with, because I wasn't sure if people would hate me for subverting the text to my own vision here. This is what I believe it represents. Some of the stuff is kind of bonkers, like this right here. Skill level plus skill level minus 1. That sounds insane. But if you saw the code for this one, you'll see that I actually simplified it. It actually had like ×1 twice in there and stuff like that. The reason why I say this is because the reason why I have it like this is because there are items in the game, and there's probably not going to be anything for Stalwart Will right now, but maybe if they kept developing it. But there are items in the game that increase your skill rank by 1, and they can go over the rank cap. Well, the person who has this skill tree can only learn 1 rank of it, but if there were ever a second rank in this, I believe this is the correct formula for determining it. So at rank 1, he'll have 1% buff. At rank 2, he should have 3% buff. This is how I determined it. If the number is red, that means that I could not identify any sort of value in actually raising its rank. But sometimes I'm just not sure, so I didn't color it red. If it was red, I kind of tested it out and could confirm like it seemed pretty worthless to raise the ranks. A lot of text for the psychic user is changed here, but if it's very complicated, just know that the AI has some really good abilities for her. But in my limited usage of this character, she has no idea how to use these abilities. Basically, she charges up 100 points of power, and then she equips a sword, a hammer, or a bow. And then she can use an ultimate or other abilities of that item. I don't know. That's why I did kind of rank them. Her bow form does have some potential usage, but I tried to rank these as according to how an AI would use them. By delving deep into the code, I was able to extract some of the data and then apply that to the player character just to test these skills out. That's one of the ways I was able to find out all these numbers. Oh, I need to fix some of this right here. So I'll fix it in the version that you see. But this is literally the text that I see with lack of spacing at all. So I'll fix that by the time you see this video. Let's see, is there anything else to update? As for the new tournament items, We have 5 weapons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 armor, and 5 trinkets. Now, I am well aware that this says knife, and its style or damage type is unarmed. That is what the game says. So I just gave you the text from the game, which is probably just pulling it from an actual value belonging to the knife data set. So yeah, it probably is an unarmed damage style knife. That is probably an unarmed damage style missile weapon. That'll be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching this guide to Sands of Salzaar. I'll see you in the next series.